Okay, so let's talk about a problem that I know a lot of you are dealing with. You're building this fantastic portfolio of websites, traffic is booming, and then the hosting bill lands. Ouch. How do you possibly manage all that success without your costs just spiraling into the stratosphere? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down today, the absolute smartest and most cost-effective ways to do it.
So let me just ask you this straight up. As you're watching your portfolio of websites grow and succeed, is all that success secretly turning into a total cost nightmare? You know the feeling, right? The more traffic you get, the more sites you launch, the higher those hosting bills climb. It is an incredibly common problem. But what if I told you there are teams out there cutting those costs by as much as 80%? No, seriously. And we're not talking about cutting corners or sacrificing performance. Not at all. It's all about building smarter. So let's dig into how they're pulling it off. This really gets us to what I call the multi-site hosting trap. It's that bizarre feeling of being penalized with higher and higher costs just for being successful. But here's the thing you have to remember. This isn't some unavoidable fate. It's an architectural problem. And the complexity is, well, it's immense. I mean, think about it. Every single one of your sites needs rock-solid compute power. Database performance has to be top-notch. You always have to be ready for those out-of-nowhere traffic spikes. And all the while, your costs are just multiplying across dozens and dozens of sites. It's a lot to handle.
All that complexity usually funnels organizations down one of two paths. And frankly, they're both pretty flawed in their own unique ways.
So you end up with this classic dilemma. On one side, you have the expensive concierge model. Platforms like Pantheon. They make things super simple, but you pay a serious premium for every single site. On the other side, you have the DIY powerhouse, just raw AWS. It gives you complete control, which is amazing. But you better have a team of DevOps experts on call 24/7 to actually manage the thing.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. When you're dealing with high-traffic portfolios, the cost model isn't just a small detail. It becomes the deciding factor. It's everything.
But what if you didn't have to make that trade-off between cost and complexity? What if there's a third option? Well, there is. And let's explore this smarter middle path that is totally changing how teams think about this. This middle path is all about running your sites on AWS, but with a critical automation layer on top. So you get all the cost benefits and ownership of being on AWS, while a platform like DevPanel handles all the complicated DevOps tasks for you. You really do get the best of both worlds. Total control without all the heavy lifting. So how does it actually work? Well, it's pretty much a simple three-step process. First, you bring your own cloud. This is so important, the infrastructure lives in your AWS account, not some vendor's. Second, you use a platform to automate all the tedious, time-consuming stuff. And third, you just deploy and scale your sites on that shared, super efficient infrastructure. That's it.
Okay, so that's the theory. But let's look at the hard numbers, right? Let's get down to brass tacks. How does this approach really stack up when you look at control, cost, and the cloud?
The cost difference is, honestly, it's staggering. For just one high-traffic site, a managed platform might run you about $1,000 a month. With the AWS plus automation approach, that cost plummets to as low as $250. That's a 75% reduction on just one site. Now just take a second and imagine scaling that kind of saving across your entire portfolio.
So why is it so much cheaper? The secret sauce is something called a shared cluster architecture. The easiest way to think of it is like this. Instead of buying a separate, expensive car for every single trip, you have a shared fleet of vehicles. You can run many sites on the same efficient infrastructure, and you only pay for what you actually use, not for a bunch of power that you might need down the road. And the cost structure here is so beautifully transparent. The core automation software can actually be free. Your main cost is just a predictable AWS starter cluster, and you only pay for expert help if and when you actually need it. This whole model gets rid of those hidden fees and those awful per-site penalties that punish you for growing.
But listen, this goes way beyond just saving money. There are huge advantages here. You get full ownership of your infrastructure. That's massive for security and compliance. You get cloud development environments that make your team's workflow so much faster. And you get awesome features like blue-green releases, which prevent downtime during critical updates. It's a game changer.
And for you performance nerds out there are even more ways to optimize. For example, by using specific AWS instances like Graviton 4, you can boost price performance for things like WordPress workloads by an extra 40%. That's a level of fine-tuning that's just not possible in most closed platforms.
All right, we have covered a ton of ground here. So let's pull it all together and talk about how you can start figuring out the right hosting strategy for you.
This table really lays out the options pretty clearly. For a small team where simplicity is absolutely king, a managed platform might still be the best fit. If you've got a whole dedicated DevOps team, manual AWS gives you the ultimate control. But for most agencies and enterprises, that middle path, AWS plus an automation tool, that's the sweet spot. It's the perfect balance of high cost control and high flexibility.
So the most crucial thing to take away from all this is simple. Hosting doesn't have to be a choice between extreme cost on one hand and extreme complexity on the other. There is a smarter, more balanced way.
And I'll just leave you with this final question to think about. As your portfolio grows, your hosting is going to scale right along with your ambition. That's a guarantee. The real question you have to ask yourself is, can your budget do the same?